Hey, Bigpod.
What?
In this week's news, I got so excited that I went to the Rust website and I started reading. And apparently, Rust users are called crustaceans.
Yes, they are.
And their logo is a crab.
Yes.
In the meantime, I live in the state of Ohio, and I know what Rust actually looks like. Cue that music. Hey guys, welcome to No Tucks Allowed. I am your host, Josh. And of course, it's been a minute since we talked about our shirts, right? So I'm wearing this wonderful plain gray t-shirt that you've probably seen me wear quite a few times on the video version. In the meantime, I've got my co-host here, Bigpod, who's wearing an equally wonderful shirt.
Yeah, it's green. A very, very washed out green, but green.
It was originally green at one point in its life. Probably a little bit greener.
It is originally washed out green.
Oh, okay. All right. So
kind of green gray type color.
Yeah. So, Bigpod, I know you're the world's biggest fan of C. Like, you absolutely love C. You're a diehard C fan.
Very much.
It is C or nothing. Never mind the C# thing, because, you know, that's Microsoft garbage. But we just love C. Does that mean that
I like C patterns.
Oh.
I don't like C programming language.
Oh, okay. Well, just a little over a week ago, we've got some news coming from Ubuntu. Because, you know, Ubuntu is trying something before Fedora for once. Well, besides ZFS, but, you know, Fedora's got its own reasons for not including that. But Ubuntu has decided they're going to attempt to replace the GNU CoreUtils. And not just with any alternative, like, you know, the BSD utils. They're using UUtils. And there's sort of a good reason, which, you know, according to comments is very debatable. But the primary things here is that UUtils is the GNU CoreUtils, but rewritten in Rust. Because, you know, why not? But anyways, this was posted by JNS Gruck on the Ubuntu forums. I don't actually know his real name, so I apologize. But
Jan Seger or Seger.
Jan Seger. Okay.
Or I might have butchered his name. It's Seager, so it could be Seger, Seager. But his name on Ubuntu Discourse is JNSGRUK, and he's VP of Engineering at Canonical.
Oh, so he's actually the guy that steers the ship here. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the guy that should be making this announcement. That's good. So there's first of all, this is not for an LTS release of Ubuntu, right?
No.
So this is going to start with Ubuntu 25.10. So that's the Ubuntu release that's coming of October of this year. Now, let's lay this out first. This is not the LTS, which means this is where Ubuntu is allowed to experiment.
Yeah.
So honestly, if they're willing to at least give this a shot, they're probably going to do it. Because let's look at the history of how this has happened, right? When was the first time Ubuntu tried Wayland by default?
I remember it like it was yesterday, because it was the first time I used seriously Linux on the desktop, and it was one of the worst experiences ever. 1710.
Yeah, and you know what happened in the next release of Ubuntu? It was no longer Wayland by default. They went back to X. But hey,
yes, because it was horrible. Nothing actually worked correctly.
Yeah, and you know what? They were willing to try. They did the same thing with Pulse Audio back in the day too. Like I I remember like the whole change to Pulse Audio and everything. Like I wasn't well, it was like right before I switched to Linux, so like I still had access to like all of the forum threads, like they were still showing up and everything. But people just complaining constantly about Pulse Audio, not working. Like the early days of Pulse. Like I was there for the first Pulse Audio stable release, but I was not there for the first time that Linux distros set up Pulse Audio by default because they were so excited for it. But
Yeah.
So if you if you don't understand like the Ubuntu release model, Ubuntu has only realistically one kind of release that they legitimately care about. Everything else is just kind of wishy-washy. They might care, they might not care. And that release
essentially their release cadence is split in 2 years between they have 3 essentially test releases where they are important to certain people.
Yeah.
Like because they bring in certain new ideas. Like for example this come in what are known interim releases. Those are the 0.4 and 0.10 releases on where 0.10 on basically every 0.10 release and every 0.4 release on
non-even numbers.
Non-even number, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
thank you.
So in the
English
event,
native speaker.
yeah. So I know that there's a minority of people that don't understand Ubuntu's versioning numbers, but if you look at like Ubuntu, like what the current LTS is 26.04. In the event you never realize, that's because that version of Ubuntu released in 2026.
April 2026.
In April.
Yeah. That's literally it.
Which April is the 4th month. So
yes,
that's how the Ubuntu versioning numbers work. And the LTS is always going to be even number year in April. That's
essentially every 4th Ubuntu release is long-term release.
Yeah. So that means that they had 3 chances to screw things up and maybe fix them.
Yeah, or just go or just go back to what worked. And this is a good experiment for, well, essentially you can always go back to 2404 if 2510 doesn't work for you because they switch to core utilities that aren't what you want.
Or, they could just use this wonderful new oxidizer tool and just switch back to the CoreUtils anyway. So,
yeah,
we'll get into that here in a second. But first of all, Bigpod, why are they experimenting with Rust-based code? There's got to be a reasoning for it. And it's not just...
First of all, because it exists.
Oh, okay.
CoreUtils is a completely separate project, has no connection, as far as I understand, has no connection to Canonical. It's a couple of years old. It's, as far as I understand, it started as essentially a couple of people trying to remake certain commands, whether it be because they were faster or because like multi-threading, and to just learn. And it grew up in trying to re-implement the entire CoreUtils stack. So that means things like MV, CP, LS, and
you mean
stuff
those
like that.
those boring terminal commands I use whenever I open up a terminal, almost guaranteed?
Yes, exactly. Those commands. And of course, there have been other projects to do that. For example, you probably all heard about libgrep, which isn't part of CoreUtils, but is also one of those Rust-based grep replacements, which grep is one of the CoreUtils, if you do not know.
Okay. So...
and if you actually talk about why, first of all, for Canonical, performance isn't actually the main reason. Even though, yes, there are certain performance benefits. Yeah, people keep talking about that Rust cannot be faster than C. It can only be slower, which, yes, because C is pretty much compiled to machine code, exactly as like Rust.
Yeah, whereas Rust is compiled to like a translation layer.
Machine code. No, no. Oh. It's pure machine code, exactly like C. So they are on the same level there. But because they're both of them are at the same level, they cannot really beat each other because they are at the same level. Yes, technically speaking, certain things compilers will do differently and can result in minor differences in speed, or because they may use different set of system calls or in different combinations or like different pattern of system calls, which may cause certain slight speed boosts or speed decreases, but those are like really irrelevant in the grand scheme of things of program running.
Yeah, and honestly though, Rust is fast enough that like the performance differences are probably not going to be noticeable to the human experience, like basically at all.
Just because it's like, we know C is one of the fastest. The only thing faster is assembly language, where you're really writing
really well written assembly language.
Yes,
because you know it turns out that GCC does a pretty good job.
Yeah, but there is one other performance thing we need to talk about: multi-threading. Multi-threading is essentially using multiple CPU cores to do one task or to do multiple tasks at the same time. For example, let's take I don't know, sort across multiple directories. You want to sort multiple directories at the same time. Why not one CPU core take this directory, one CPU core take this directory, one CPU core take this directory, and which means while it would have to be done sequentially, one directory after another, this way it can be done in at the same time, which would of course be faster because it will be as fast as the slowest directory.
Which, you know, the slowest directory is always the biggest one with all the video files in it.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, which means that it will be essentially third of the size if you have third of the time if you have 3 equally sized directories, or close to that, because there are some things you need to do before you can do multi-threading and all that. But yeah, like close to third of the speed, or close to the third of the time, so 3 times the speed. And another thing that appears to be a problem from what I hear and see is large file systems, especially, let's say, for example, you have multi-petabyte system.
So wait.
Because, you know,
let's just say, for example, I have access to all the files stored on the Google Cloud, right? And I just run an ls-l command. Yes. How long is that going to take compared to the Rust option? Well, let's take a moment here. And first of all, recognize that the ls command is pretty fast as it is. It's pretty darn good at its job. But the fundamental core of ls is that it's single-threaded. And when we're listing out the directories using ls, it's going to sort through everything one file at a time on one CPU core.
Yeah. And it's all done sequentially, and like it first indexes then outputs. It doesn't actually index and output, which means you can, a lot of the time you can lower and not lose any kind of things which come from things happening side by side, which like let's say order would be different. That won't happen because at the end of the day you index something and then you output after you do a small sort, which is exactly what you would get an enormous speed increase.
Yeah, you know.
For a great example that is also find. Try to do a petabyte-sized find.
Not even
You're
petabytes.
You're going to be there for a very long time.
Honestly, just find something from like your root file and just run that, because you know that's a real world example right there that you can just run on your system. And
more files you have, longer it will take, because it literally has to check every file. If you have loads of big files, or like small amount of big files, it won't take as long. But if you have basically loads upon loads of really small files, the metadata is still the same size. It's still gonna take exactly the same time as it would take for that file that is but it's 100 gigabytes in size.
Now,
because metadata is still those few kilobytes.
Before the comments roll in, though, it is possible to do parallelization in C. It's just
of course
a little bit harder than it is in Rust.
Yeah, quite a bit harder because
quite a bit harder because you got to. Well, you got to remember that when C came out, the idea of a second thread on a CPU core existing wasn't even thought about yet.
Yeah, it was like
we're talking like
what?
We're talking like computers way back in the day. So, and
even if they were talking about a second thread, they were not talking about utilizing second thread in the same program, because it was timeshare computers. That second thread would be used for another user completely or another program, not for the same program to speed up that same program.
Now, there are other benefits to Rust besides the parallelization. For example,
memory safety,
the
of course.
type system, the borrow checker, and
compiler.
Yeah.
Compiler. The Rust compiler that comes with Rust, not the one by GNU, is I don't remember who, but I remember someone saying it's like like the compiler is giving you a hug and telling you, you did that wrong, you did that wrong, you did that wrong. Please fix that. It's gonna be better, because it is like it's made to, instead of something like Go or C# produces a garbage collector to collect certain memory issues and stuff that happens during runtime. Instead, compiler does that at compile time. It tells you what's wrong and what you should fix, and it is annoying. But all of the fixes that you do is you're basically removing all the sort of bugs you wouldn't either notice.
It's also
or would
so
be
much
really
cleaner.
hard to fix.
It's also so much cleaner than trying to read like a compiler log for a C program, because how many of those lines are you just blatantly ignoring? A lot of them.
Yeah, and a lot of people then we're gonna say that Rust takes a long time to compile. As we said multiple times during this podcast, that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, compiling happens on for most groups, most people, compiling happens on some random server somewhere in Microsoft or Amazon cloud. You don't even care about that, or on your own build farm somewhere in some data center where there are 100 servers doing builds for you.
Yeah, most of the time people do the compiling for you. That way you don't have to compile things yourself. That's why binary packages exist.
Yes, and at the same time, people will go and say, maybe you should just use fuzzing or stuff like Valgrind or similar tools on C code and get the same effect. Let me tell you a secret. If you use fuzzing, Valgrind, and similar tools on C code, the build process gets loads longer, even longer than Rust.
Yeah, so
and you have to do it basically on every build, just like you would do it on Rust. But Rust does it automatically as part of the compile time, whereas in C, all that has to be additionally programmed. And guess what? Even there can be mistakes.
Yeah. That said, there is a but why section in the post, and of course we have this post linked in the show notes because we're responsible like that, and it does cover on a couple other topics. First of all, Ubuntu isn't necessarily in this for the performance. We said this. They're in this because what they care about out of the software is, for one thing, that it works, it's reliable,
yes,
and it's productive, and it's resilient.
Yeah,
none of that really says performant, but there are. I would assume that if they just rewrote the entire CoreUtils package as like a Python package, people would probably care. Like a lot of people would probably care, but because Python is real great at that data parsing. But anyways, So that's what they're. That's the main reason as to why they're making this change, is because that's what they want out of the software, and they understand that some people might run into like issues that are missing. Like for example, like the UUtils CP command does not support SE Linux labels.
Yeah.
So, which I know that Ubuntu doesn't use SE Linux, but that doesn't mean that an Ubuntu user doesn't use SE Linux on a remote system or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
but one reason, like I see that is great that somebody big is using UUtils. These kind of things will get fixed,
and it will get
because
fixed
it will be
fast.
Yeah, because it will be in the interest of canonical people to fix it. It will be interest of UUtils people to fix it. And guess what? That's what open source is all about.
Right?
It's fixing problems you have, so you have a better experience.
And
it's or that fix problems that other have, so you had fuzzy feelings for yourself.
And
that's the point of open source.
That also means that there's going to be somebody that is tasked by Canonical and paid by Canonical to fix that thing that you don't want to do, just simply because you don't know how to do it, or you just don't want to touch it because that's going to be cancer on your part. So there's going to be somebody that's paid to do that for you. So
yes. And one thing I didn't mention is that one reason why this kind of re-implementation is also good is there are certain long-standing bugs that we might not even see that will get fixed whether you think about it or not, because somebody will write things again different, of course, because, well, you have to do a re-implementation. You cannot just copy-paste the code and translate it. What you get is essentially that you're going to introduce new bugs, of course. It's programming. You're going to introduce bugs. But you're going to fix certain long-standing bugs that people have been working around for probably sometimes even tens of years.
Yeah. That said, if for some reason...
And no, bugs aren't features. I don't care how many times people say that.
Well, sometimes bugs turn into features. But that's a rare occasion.
Rare occasion, it has to be very specifically on the part of programmer to decide that. It's not just because bug was shipped and people use it. It's now a feature.
Yeah,
that's a bad idea.
Yeah. It's not a good idea to come up with all your features from bugs. Sorry, I know.
Yeah.
But it's a nice little chuckle of a joke every now and then. So let's talk about Oxidizer. This is the tool that this guy wrote to basically just be able to just drop and replace like your C binaries for like these Rust utilities. Which, hey, it's pretty hot until you read how it works and what you're supposed to do for it. But anyways, so this tool Oxidizer, right? After you get it configured and everything, it's just a few simple commands to, just be able to switch, right? Like sudo oxidizer enable -- all -- es, which basically switches all of your CoreUtils and your other various C code for like the Rust alternatives. So switching out sudo for sudo rs, find for find utils, and diff for diff utils. And it's just going to enable everything to Rust. That way you can have an almost GNU free system. There's probably still going to be a couple GNU utilities hanging around there, for the sake of compatibility.
Well, Bash.
Yeah, because, it turns out that people really like Bash.
Yeah.
So, anyways, not only does it allow you to switch to them, it also allows you to switch away. And this is done almost seamlessly, I think. I haven't actually... tested it with this yet, but it's already uploaded to Cargo, so you can just Cargo install it and just try it out for yourself. That said, if you're not using an Ubuntu distro, you're probably going to break something, but I'm all about breaking things, and in fact, this Debian system, I might just blow up just for the sake of doing that, because I kind of want to get away from Debian anyway, because
it's already broken, though. He'll gonna need to blow it away anyway, because he broke his system.
Well, I'm sorry.
Just by using OBS.
Yeah,
At one point, I need to get you onto stable things.
Well, technically, I'm on Debian stable. It's just not being very stable.
Working stable things and get you
working
to,
stable
to
things.
stay on that.
Get me to a stable, probably Fedora Atomic distro derived system. That way, you know, things just work like they're supposed to. Even though I keep breaking those
There's a live
too.
stream idea. There's a live stream idea.
Of course. Bigpod makes an OS for Josh. There you go. That said, Yasada Linux, it is a GitHub file. And I still need to. I've been meaning to continue working on that, but it's a Fedora Atomic spin.
It's a Docker file.
It's a Fedora Atomic spin, where the intent of it is to always provide the latest and greatest of my dot files.
Yeah,
I'm still working on it. It's not dead, even though I haven't pushed any updates to it in months. It's just that I've been working on everything else. But I am working on it.
At this point, everything could be a Docker file if we wanted to, if we actually cared enough about it.
Well, yeah. Everything could be a Docker file, including like this Ubuntu release. So,
yeah.
Anyways, let's stop talking about Ubuntu for a minute. And Bigpod, I know that you're a big fan of, you know, self-hosting things yourself. Yes. And so am I. And there's a very popular piece of software that people tend to be like one of the very first things that they set up. And that is a media server, right? Yeah. So in this space, Plex is a dominating force. We just have to understand this now. Because, you know, I use Jellyfin because I like Jellyfin. But Plex is the monster of the media server user space. And it's like the popular option. So when they come out with like a change, people in like this field tend to notice. And this time around, though, it's purely from pricing, right? It turns out that making software sometimes costs time, and sometimes you want to be compensated for the time. So, of course, Bigpod Plex has this thing called a Plex Pass that enables like several things, but primarily allows you easy remote access to your Plex server from like mobile applications and basically anything that you could sign into a Plex account on. And it's almost doubling in some places, but ultimately I'm looking at this and like it's still pretty affordable. But anyways, Plex was traditionally on a monthly price $5 a month for their Plex Pass, and it was $40 annually. Oh, well, that's getting changed from $7 a month to $70 annually. And a lifetime pass was $120, now it's $250. Which, honestly, the cost of that lifetime pass is still much lower than most other pieces of software I've ever seen. Like, I remember you could buy all of Adobe, the entire Adobe suite for like $380. That was like 10 years ago at this point.
I remember you can buy a DaVinci Resolve for a few $100.
Yeah. Now, anyways, Plex has a bit of a history to it because it was like the first popular media server that people would host, and with it being the first in the kind of space that it's in, there's been a lot of issues with like people using questionably illegal content and sharing it. So of course it's got like that stick to it where it's like if you hear somebody's running a Plex server, it obviously means that they're using questionably, that they're providing content that they obtained or are sharing via questionable means. And they've been investing quite heavily into like all this third-party streaming stuff, which is probably why they're upping the prices, because you know that stuff is just getting more expensive all the time.
Yep, it is.
But do you run a media server at all, Bigpod?
No.
No? You just watch video files off your NAS?
I'm basically stuck on the streaming services.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And YouTube.
Well, you see, I live in the middle of these cornfields, so I learned pretty fast that most of the streaming services didn't work for me, except for YouTube. Like YouTube YouTube, in my experience, no matter like what my internet connection was, as long as I had an internet connection, YouTube was probably going to work. It's just sometimes I might needed to wait for a little bit for the video to buffer. But if you're running on a dial-up connection, you can load a YouTube video, but you can't even load the Netflix webpage. So, they've done a pretty good job at like the reliability of of YouTube for those markets. But there are alternatives to Plex. The other big name that you see in this space is Jellyfin. Now, Jellyfin is the media server that I use, but Jellyfin is also a fork of this piece of software called Emby. Yeah. And then, of course, if you want to do like the media server thing a bit more manually, there's also Kodi. So, you do have options you can use. But I figure somebody somewhere in the audience probably has a Plex server, and they pay for the Plex Premium. Maybe they just didn't get the email yet. But I still don't hate Plex. Like the main reason I don't use it is because I just don't really have much of a reason to anymore. Because I use this wonderful thing called Tailscale that, I just remote access my media server anywhere anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bigpod. There's also another elephant in the room. This time with possible political ramifications compared to the last time we talked about this, because heaven forbid my current president.
Yeah.
So, the European Union is still going ahead and giving Apple and Google both fines. This time using the Digital Markets Act, which I'm not an EU citizen, so I haven't really read it. But, I like some of the things I'm reading in this Ars Technica article.
Yeah.
So
essentially, it regulates market leaders, as far as I understand.
Make those monopolies
Apple,
be not so much monopolistic.
Yeah, Apple and Google, who have basically monopoly on their market, which is the app market the digital app market on Android and iOS and iPadOS and so on.
Yeah, so in this case, like third-party app markets on iOS is like the primary cited reason
on Android.
Yeah,
and also on Android, third-party markets, and of course the whole having. I believe this also includes the whole. You can only use Apple or Google as a payment provider.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Which it's always been a little bit more open on Android, but that's not why Google's in this article.
Yeah, then why is it?
So, according to the EU, Google has made a number of changes to its network of online services and products. But it's not going far enough. Google is still found to be favoring its own products and services to an impermissible degree, as what they claim. So, and it turns out that the Google Play platform in general just seems to be cheaper compared to the third-party app markets. Probably because the Android device is saying that, hey, I have like the Amazon App Store installed on here. Let's make everything on the Google Play Store cheaper. So the EU is just like, hang on a second here. Hang on a second.
In general, they don't steer towards cheaper options.
Yeah.
Which essentially could just mean that they could pay through the website instead of through Google Play services.
Yeah, and it turns out that Google is still blocking developers from like pointing to getting like paid versions of their software or setting up their subscriptions through like means that are not Google's payment system. So
yeah, same with, as far as I understand, it's same with Apple.
Yeah,
so that's a big problem.
Well, anyways, I'm certain that both Google and Apple says that there's nothing wrong here. You're finding us for the sake of finding us. But at the same time, you also gotta remember that Google reported in 2024 that it made over $100 billion in profit. So it's not like that they don't have money to spend.
Yeah.
And honestly, if Google is spending money to give a government, or if Google has to give a government money, that money then goes to taxpayer. It goes into programs that benefit taxpayers. So I don't see a problem.
Yeah. And in general, many of the EU consumer laws also affect the rest of the world and making it a better, safer place for consumers.
Yeah, because you got to remember that the EU is not just one country. It's a lot of different countries.
Yes.
And many of them are technically classified as first world nations. So
yes, all of them basically. and in general, like EU does a lot for consumer protection.
Which, there are some people.
For what reason? Let's not speculate, but
well,
there could be many reasons why.
Anyways, I've seen some comments about this already, where people are coming out and saying that there is nobody in the world that wants the EU to be capable of doing stuff like this. But at the same time, when, the EU is making the change, saying that, hey, Apple, you can't use the Lightning connector, you have to use USB-C because that's literally what everybody else uses. Yeah. I don't see a problem with that. I mean, yes, I'm certain that my $30 iPhone Apple charger is now useless to me. But at the same time, I don't have to buy a new phone because, I still have my old phone. But for some reason, I'm buying a new phone anyway. Now it's got this USB-C charger, and Apple still is not shipping a charging brick with it because they want you to spend however much money on their USB-C charger. Well, first of all, it's a USB-C charger, so you don't have to use Apple's. You can basically just use any of them, right? So
and they also point that preferred, if not needed, is USB PD, which means if your devices like laptop, phone, headphones, tablet all use USB PD, you just need one cable. And
right?
Preferably the strongest one. That one of your laptop, you plug it. You can plug all the things into that one cable instead of having for each one of them its own power brick, because they all use separate standards for fast charging, like separate voltages. USB PD handles everything.
My favorite thing is that I have a 120 watt charger that I picked up from my laptop, and I can still plug that into my phone and not be afraid that my phone's going to blow up.
I have my laptop's charger, original charger from Dell. I use it to charge my headphones, my phone, my laptop, everything.
Yeah.
I don't use any other charger anymore.
The USB-C standard is amazing. I just wish it was better enforced.
Many standards along with it are amazing. That touch it. Like, why couldn't any other cable have data, Ethernet, DisplayPort, power along the same cable? Not many other cables can do that.
Right? It's
besides
it makes
USB-C
sense.
and Thunderbolt.
It makes sense. It's just like, why didn't we have the one cable that does all sooner? Because heaven forbid, HDMI does exist. It supports data protocols. It supports power delivery to an extent. And it supports your video signals. So heaven forbid, why can't we get the same thing but better? Because we're in a more modern age with USB. Yeah. And heaven forbid, the USB Corporation is probably the best group to have such a standard. Now, my only issue with my only issue with USB-C is that not every single cable is the same.
Yes, but that is because USB-C isn't a standard of what goes through it, but a standard of cable. Yeah. Remember that a standard of cable just says this cable has to be able to get this much things through it, and that's it. Like, it has to look like this, has to be this, and that's it. That's what USB-C standard is. It's not about, or it's about the connector itself more than the cable, actually.
Yeah, which I'm still a little shaky about pushing 120 watts through a skinny little, probably like 4 or 5 millimeter thick at the most cable. Like, that's a lot of power to be pushing through that. But, I like that I can.
Yeah.
Because, it's nice, have my laptop charged in half an hour and not have to wait like 3.5 days that I would have to wait if I just used the Type A cord or something like that. Or, having to make sure that I brought the correct power cable for the laptop off the barrel connector, because heaven forbid finding a replacement for a 8+ year old a laptop, it can be a bit challenging if I didn't have a ThinkPad. but I do have a ThinkPad, so finding a replacement cable for it is not hard. But anyways, I'm certain that there's somebody out there that absolutely loves USB, and I want you, the listener, to tell me all about your love with USB Type-C, or what you hate about it, because heaven forbid, the naming conventions for USB protocols also kind of sucks. And honestly, I want you, the listener, to send us an email to contact@tuckspace.com and tell me your absolutely favorite bad name for a USB spec, because I guarantee that there's multiple out there, and some of them are going to make you chuckle. Because, high-speed USB.
3.1 Gen 2 8x or some 8xx or 8x8 or something like that. Those are like amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing. There's also some just stupid too, like, high-speed USB. It's not very fast. It wasn't very fast back then either.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you should remember fast Ethernet.
Yep.
100 megabit.
And I know that not everyone wants to send an email. That's why we have a Discord room as well. I have the invite link for that in the show notes. It's probably going to stay in the show notes because I'm not willing to give Discord money. That way, I can have a proper link. Or, one of these days, maybe we'll just set up like a redirects URL. Go like discord.notuxallowed.com or whatever, and it'll just send you an invite. But, we're working on that. And if you want to support the show, not necessarily like, giving us feedback or anything like that, even though that's much appreciated, but you instead want to give us money because you know that we're doing podcasting the hard way. Patreon.com/notuxallowed. Give us $5, give us 10, give us 20. I don't really care. Send us money. Because if you do, we're going to send you a premium subscription feed. And what this premium subscription feed provides is a pre-show and a higher bitrate feed. And maybe in the future, more exclusive content. Because, I've been thinking about this for a hot minute now. But what happens if, I just, upload a, just, random thoughts and just post it into the premium feed? Be like, hey, I'm thinking about installing OpenSUSE again and trying to daily drive it for, the 20th year in a row now. And it still fails, But instead, we're probably just going to install Gen 2 anyway, so. Or, I might just get bored and, just start uploading all these error messages that I have to fix with distros. I'm certain that there's somebody out there that wants to listen to all the stuff I have to fix on a daily basis concerning my own desktop system, because I'm always breaking stuff. Currently I can't. The main reason why I haven't done distro hacking is because I haven't been able to get screen sharing working on Debian. I understand that I'm using Wayland, and I have the XDG desktop portals packages that are relevant to my compositor installed. But for some reason, OBS just can't pick it up, either through Flatpak or native package, even though I legitimately remember this working when I first installed the system.
Yeah.
So,
Josh.
Typical things. Always happens. But we've also got these wonderful links right here. These are our preferred social media services, our Fediverse IDs. This is stuff that you would use for Mastodon or even those things called threads. I got some new threads today, but it's not threads, the social media service. So it's just clothing. Sorry, it's just more white t-shirts. So we're there. We've also got our own YouTube channels. youtube.com/@10leej, 10leej, and youtube.com/@bigpod, where, we can find our own solo content as well.
Yep.
And of course, you can also find all the relevant links for like contacting us directly, or even looking at some of the stuff we're doing for like the infrastructure of our system at tuckspace.com, which is a fancy little Linktree style page where it links to stuff.
Yes.
If you want to know what that stuff that is, you're going to have to go to it. That way, we can get the page hits. That way we can get our Google AdSense revenue that we don't have enabled.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to enable that stuff anytime soon, because I just don't see why I would want to. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the show this week. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.